Let's take a look at some charts on EOS from this week's article on Brave New Coin. So market cap wise, EOS is amongst the scrum, as I say, in these lower mid altcoin ranges. I don't know what people say anymore as far as high cap, mid cap, low cap. It's definitely not a low cap. It's definitely closer to the high cap ranges. It's definitely not moving on its own volition. It is very closely tied to Tron, LTC, XLM. Just eyeballing this here, the correlations seem very high. So market cap wise, nothing special going on with EOS at the moment. I think it just benefits from high number of coins and being listed in a fair number of places. It looks like sort of a zombie coin, and I'll get to that in more detail. If you look at all the block producers here, I'll say this with any proof of stake coin that has validators, Tezos, or I'll say it with ETH. When ETH 2.0 fully launches, having most of these be exchanges, or the fact that most of these are exchanges, is a centralization issue. Many of these are in Asia, which is a centralization issue. Many of these are in China, which is a centralization issue. We don't know how many of these actually run a full node. I don't know the size of full nodes. Another problem for any proof of stake network, or any network really, ETH, Tezos, all the same issues I have with proof of stake and nodes and validators is doubly true for EOS, because as soon as there's a governance issue or governance dispute that the community disagrees with any one of these validators or any group of validators, then it becomes an issue of, do we move our EOS out of these validators? How do we handle that? Do people care enough to change their vote, basically, through direct democracy versus representative democracy, which is kind of what this is. So all that just continues to be an issue for EOS and any proof of stake coin or any coin that uses a small number of validators. Ideally, you want geographic distribution globally. You want representation of all sorts of individuals, like if it's the UN of validators, right? We want people in Ghana, people in Toronto, people in Shanghai. We want all validators all over the place just to mitigate against any sort of centralization issues. And speaking of centralization issues, so there was an issue with sort of ballot stuffing these block producers. I don't know if that's an issue now, but I always include stuff like this in articles to show, like, not only is it like a problem that I talk about a lot on the videos, but it's actually a problem that's happened before, and there's evidence for this happening, where an exchange is trying to get up in the block producers list just so they can collect the proof of stake rewards. Something else that I'd like to see for all the validators is proof of address, proof of what they are, who they are, so you can't get stuff like this where it's some random block producer trying to get in, centralized block producer trying to get in multiple nodes just so they can collect the reward in an insidious fashion. Looking at the GitHub commits just for one of the repos, clearly downtrend here. Larimer has committed very few commits, if that's the proper terminology, to the EOS repos over the past probably year and a half now. You can look at that on GitHub. So, I don't want to say the main developers have flew the coop or the EOS.io people have flew the coop here. There's clearly, they have a physical location in Virginia. They moved, I think, closer to DC. I think I mentioned that in the article. So there's definitely development going on with all the money they collected. It's not like they just exit scammed or anything like that. But I guess it's hard to track what's going on with EOS. I looked up, as I do with any article, what's going on in the past month, any big news, any big releases. They had a release candidate recently, 2.1 or something, but overall, not much over the past few months that I could see. Looking at value staked, EOS is here in this grayish, yellowish bubble between DOT, Tezos, ADA, Atom, Algo. ETH is on here now, Tron. So it's definitely up there. It's 57% of the network being staked, which is definitely quite high. And the notional value is quite high relative to other proof of stake coins. If you look at transaction counts and block counts, so they had a bit of an issue with an airdrop in late 2019 where it kind of halted the network, slowed the network significantly, block counts dropped. But since then, the network has recovered. Transactions per day look a lot more organic. They looked most organic here, and they're starting to look less and less organic. What I mean by that is transactions per day in general aren't going to pop up and down in the millions over a day. You know, that just isn't something that screams of people doing that. It's more bots or some random airdrop or some specific one-of event. If you're bullish, you want to see this. You want to see a slow rise in transactions. It's real. It's week over week. If you're bearish, you're viewing a decline. What we see here is just ranging transactions per day. Nothing really crazy one way or the other, but it's definitely not going up. So there's no shades of bullishness there. I included in this article the volume of Dapp list as well as the top users Dapp list. It's no surprise that an exchange has the most volume, as well as multiple gambling Dapps. Basically all the most illegal, let's say, in my country, gambling Dapps move from ETH to EOS because of transaction fees, most likely. It's good to see the chain sort of grow up in ETH's case, and I think EOS may or may not get there, but if transaction fees remain low, which they should, I wouldn't expect any of these gambling Dapps to go away. Ponzi schemes, pyramid schemes, whatever they are. These are going to be here, dice games. These are going to be here forever in perpetuity on EOS most likely because transactions are free. And as far as users are concerned, Upland, which is like a Decentraland clone as far as I can tell, virtual property stuff is at the top of the list. And then there's a social influencing Dapp, which I keep meaning to check out, but I haven't. It's called Yup, also up there on users with Nudex. Number 3, Google Trends for most coins are just flat, including EOS. You know, they have small upticks here and there, but relative to anything 2017, 2018, even 2019, there's been really no discernible activity on EOS.io. You can't really Google trend for EOS because it's also a chapstick. So, I mean, and it's a word that people use in everyday language. So it's hard to like pick apart the coin versus not the coin. Which is why I'd look for EOS.io specifically here, which may not be fair to EOS, the coin, but it is what it is. Let's look at some technicals here. We have the 5200 EMAs, VPVR, yearly pivots, Bitfinex long-short ratio, RSI volume. So I noticed a couple things right off the bat. You know, there's clearly some sort of shrinking range here on EOS. You know, if you triangle this out, yeah, it's just, you know, it's moving towards something, whether it's accumulation or distribution, I don't know. EMAs keep twisting. You know, we've had 3-4 periods now of brief bullish EMA twists that have gone nowhere. Usually when I see this, I go up a time frame, which is what I did for the cloud chart. I'll show that in a second. VPVR basically shows, you know, this strong magnet for price at around the current price. So it's kind of fair price based on historic volume. The second thing I noticed was this long-short ratio on Bitfinex. It's almost entirely long, almost all-time high longs. So that's dangerous if price goes lower. Luckily for EOS, it probably won't happen because BTC is popping off, and it's hard for any USD pairs to just go the opposite direction when BTC is increasing rapidly. But that'd be one thing to watch for. If we do get lower lows here and these longs get scared, it's going to push price probably to multi-year lows at that point. Yearly pivots show you where the upside resistance is mathematically, but you can just look at these local highs as well. Resistance, 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 all the way up. So trend-wise, you know, this is a stinker for me because there's nothing going on, right? It's just kind of flat, declining, nothing exciting yet. Worth a watch, maybe, but trend-wise, not exciting. The reason it's maybe a watch and out of the bear doldrums, if we pop on this, what ended up being 1,000-day bearish trend pitchfork, pick 3 points, it establishes a rate of change with price wanting to return to this median line over and over and over, which is what it did. Finally, though, it's very clearly out of this pitchfork now. So it's probably time to retire this bearish pitchfork, and maybe over 3 years' time, EOS will finally see its day in the sun on the USD pair. The trend metrics kind of support that in this case, not so much for the MAs, but here it's pretty clear that something's different than bearishness. The past 1,000 days are kind of behind us now. Looking at the daily 2-day cloud, Like I said, I zoomed out because the daily cloud's a mess, just like the MAs are a mess, right? The trades here are terrible. You're long here, you're out, you're long here, you're short, whatever. But if we look at the 2-day cloud chart, it's also messy, but maybe less messy. Very few candles above the cloud. And similar to that pitchfork, we're starting to get to a point where we're just going to get forced above the cloud here because we've been flat for so long. It reminds me a lot of Ripple as well. Ripple had that year-long inverted head and shoulders thing that eventually just popped because people stopped selling, right? And I think we're there for EOS based on cloud. Anything higher than 310 is probably go time for a long position on the 2-day chart. Lastly, looking at EOS BTC again on the 2-day. So this is actually the 200-day EMA. This is the 2-day cloud though. So all this looks mega bearish. It does have a bullish divergence here on this lower low. It is sort of within this range of support. I haven't looked at it today, but it's probably lower if I had to guess because BTC had a nice little move up. So obviously this, doesn't look bullish. I don't even think I'd take a knife stab at this. Really, it looks like it wants to retest all-time lows. I mean, there's just no bid here. It's consolidated and down every time it's tried to do anything. It's been held down by the 200-day moving average, by the cloud. There's nothing here, right? There's plenty of volume from, say, 14,000 sats to 40,000 sats. But as it stands now, there's just no hope on the BTC pair. So really, EOS is kind of a lukewarm milquetoast. Fundamentally, technically, nothing really going on here. It's definitely tradable in that, if this pops above the cloud, then it's probably a long, but I don't have any confidence in this fundamentally. I don't have any confidence in any trend calls either. So we'll see what happens in 2021, but 2020 and 2019 were not kind to EOS thus far.